Mic check. Mic's working?
Hello.
Okay, one's working.
Two. Oh.
Two. Okay, we can manage, don't worry. So thank you guys for that intro. I guess my first question, just to kind of set the scene, how do you guys define leadership? So from your experiences and what you've seen as good leaders, what would you guys say defines leadership for you? And maybe we'll start with Mel.
So for me, it's about the person. It's about authenticity. It's about vulnerability. It's about honesty. So for me, before even the vision or anything like that, it's who is this person? What is their character? Do they have integrity? Do they really care? And do they want the best for you? That's kind of number one. Number two is, okay, vision and purpose. Where are they trying to get to? What's their vision for the team? What's their vision for, if it's a CIO I'm speaking to, what's their vision for their company? Where's the business trying to get to? And then the third area, I guess, is their ability really to actually deliver almost, or put people in place to actually achieve that. And if you don't have all three, I'm kind of wary of that, because I don't think it works without all three, and I think you can kind of get burnt at times. But yeah.
I think mine works. Mine are quite similar to yours. I agree on authenticity, because how can I follow you if I don't believe that you have integrity, if I don't believe that you have my back, or if I don't believe in your vision? And then my second one would be responsibility. Someone who takes ownership. If we've signed up to deliver something, you're going to make sure it gets done, but also responsibility in that when something goes wrong, you will protect your team as a leader and make sure that the blame doesn't fall on them. So the leaders I respect are ones where something's gone wrong. They know who's to blame, but they don't put them on the line. They protect their team. And then the last one, again, would be capability. How can you speak with authority, and how can I respect your authority if you sound like you don't know what you're talking about?
Mine works out, yeah. So I definitely concur with the previous points. I think when I think about leadership, it's really an interesting concept. And I remember once having a debate in one of our digital factory meetings, because a lot of the time people provide for you representations of good leaders who have come before you. And my curious mind then raises the point that you create these hypotheses that humans have these themes and characters, but this person you're telling me is a good leader broke them. They come across as a hypocrite. So why are they still a good leader? The second question I asked the people was, well, these people you're raising to me as good leaders, they're of a certain type of background. So therefore, how do you know a good leader who comes from my background if you've never seen them or you never look at them? And so one of the really things it raises to me is, back to the point about authenticity, is you really can't be a great leader. You could be a good leader, but can't be a great leader unless you're really grounded in who you are yourself. And that means when people challenge you, it really makes you think hard about how you're going to respond. Do you, A, just conform because there's a theoretical book that says good leaders think this way? Or do you ask yourself the question, what is it I'm actually purposed to do here? When you sit on your purpose with an intention, then you don't need to compromise unnecessarily. You're very intelligent about when you compromise for the sake of compromising, and when you know that line of compromise is just too far. And so for me, leadership, first of all, is an internal battle that we all have to face, and that's what then makes us all leaders, because every one of you has a unique background and story you've walked through. And for me, the first thing I look in a leader is the ability to articulate that to me. Help me understand you. I'm not going to hold you to a level of perfection that even I can't hold, because we're humans. So let's remove the perfectionism about leadership, and let's bring back the humanness about leadership, which is a person who starts with a purity of mind about a mission that applies themselves with integrity in accordance with that mission, and will bring people along that journey because we share similar visions. And so what I love about these type of conferences and panels is there are more people outside that I look at that look similar to myself. However, I don't make that assumption, because just like saying all black people are the same, I know that all white people aren't the same. And so what I've really got to do is invest my time in the person, This is the second most important thing to me about a leader, a person who is about the people, who will spend most of their time trying to understand the team they have so that they can support them to be the best they can be. So ultimately, for me, a leader is a servant, most importantly, because the best leaders are the ones that serve their people to be the best that they can be. Otherwise, a leader could do it themselves. And so, again, for me, it creates a different mindset and different questions. But the first thing you shouldn't compromise is, first of all, the rich story that only you uniquely have. Because that is probably the thing that makes you uniquely capable to lead in certain scenarios. So those things, for me, authenticity of self, understanding who you are and why it's important to almost cherish the person you are, the ecosystem you've grown through, the struggles you've gone through, because it gives you a different mindset that others don't understand. And then it makes you a great ambassador of that background for the change you want to go forwards.
Thank you. I think something that I picked up from everything that's been said is that you guys see leadership as very human-focused. It's all about the individual and all about that connection that you build with your teams and ensuring that they can trust and see who you are. And I think that's such an interesting point because I agree that authenticity is central to leadership. So on that kind of topic, I think one thing that we talk about a lot in Accenture in the African Caribbean Network is about mentorship. And that, of course, is very much human-focused as well. So what role would you guys say mentors and sponsors have played in your career? And I think it would be interesting to see your viewpoint on mentorship within our community and how that's played a role, and mentorship outside of this community, as in mentors that might not be from the same background as yourself, and how that has played a role in your careers. Should we start with Beryl this time?
Yeah. I was hoping you'd go to the far end. Mentors and sponsors. I'd say that Mel was my very first mentor. I actually met her before I joined Accenture. I attended a Women in Tech event, and at the time my hair was even shorter than this, and I was applying for Accenture, and I said to her, should I grow my hair out so I can have braids? Because as Black women, that's a challenge we face. What should my hair look like for me to look professional? And she said, no. Why compromise who you are? And she doesn't realize this, and I feel like I'm only just realizing that now, but that has spurred me on throughout my career at Accenture and made sure that I am 100% my authentic self. That was a watershed moment where I realized I can be me and still be successful. And the mentors that I've had in my career at Accenture, my career counselors, have also just encouraged that authenticity, because we are all drawn to someone who feel like we know, who feel like we understand their story. So if you can surround yourself with people that make you feel comfortable to be yourself, encourage you to be yourself, then I think you are putting yourself in a good position going forward. No, I'm assuming it's going to
The role that mentors have played in my life. To be transparent with you, my mentorship relationship is very impersonal. What I mean by that is I've constantly searched for mentors I could speak to and talk to, but I found more of them as people I observe who I don't have a relationship, so I observe from afar. And I don't know whether that's because intrinsically the people that I find myself around don't think the same way that I do. Because one of the clear things to consider is that, your way of thinking, to Beryl's point, attracts a certain type of person. And you'll be fortunate if you get people who think similarly, so you can build a strong network. But for those who think or find themselves sometimes isolated and lonely, and I have, to be transparent with you, even within a great company like Accenture, found myself in positions of feeling lonely. And so in those scenarios, I would love to say I've had people that mentored me through and helped me understand how to deal with those challenges, but actually it was the people I worked with that almost created their own virtual mentorship. So it wasn't as though I went to each of them and said, okay, how do I do X, Y, and Z? What I actually embodied was a constant need for a 360 feedback. And the 360 feedback gave me almost a persona of someone who could tell me in multiple aspects of my behavior, whether in work or otherwise, how people perceived me and how they felt about me. And I was really want to talk about the perception and the dynamic of perception with you, and obviously what it means to leaders. For me, what it meant is I was constantly reflective of my impact on people. And so by becoming more aware of my impact on people, it allowed me to become a lot more open to developing people who were not like myself. And as I said before, one of the great things about leaders is the ability to understand not everyone thinks the way you do. The second thing that I found more recently is, and trust me, I've chased a lot of mentors through emails and otherwise, but everyone's busy. And so you don't want to feel, I often think, that because you don't have a mentor, that you're not growing. And so the second best place I found mentorship is with family, especially family who are of similar ages, but also family who have been in similar professions, because they trust you, you trust them. And one of the things about mentors is, to Beryl's point, they need to create for you a relationship where you can feel confident being vulnerable. Because, quite frankly, we change most when we feel vulnerable because we're open to changing. When we're flying high, we feel we're the bee's knees. And I know I'm not the only person who feels this way. When you're hitting all the aces, you're like, yeah, I've got this game locked. I understand the book. Forget Neo, I created this matrix. Until sometimes something goes wrong and then you're hit back to ground zero and you ask, right, how do I reevaluate myself? And so right then, as I said, family members can be very great in terms of mentorship. And that's the reason why for myself and the team up here, we spend a lot of time talking about mentorship because we understand the importance and the dynamic it creates for us and our people. I will make one more last statement and pass over. Without mentorship, without people who can guide you, without people who you can talk to, you leave yourself alone to try to define and understand the world you've only got a limited time to understand. And if you invest the whole of the currency of time you have to learn the lessons other people have already previously learned, then I would call you a bad investor. The best thing you can do with the currency of time that you have, having been clear about what it is you're interested in, is find people who have also done similar things, who give you a 360 view and learn and cash in on their experience. Because it will accelerate you through to becoming the best person you are, now or in the future, than if you go through exactly the same mistakes.
So I am actually really passionate about mentorship. So I know Beryl's mentioned, and there's lots of people in this room in Accenture that I'd say I've personally mentored. But that definitely comes from the mentorship that I've actually received. So before I even started Accenture, so that was 6 years ago, I was at a small technology company. It was like a telecoms company, and it was like an old boys club. And there was the next level up was directorship. I mean, I thought it was amazing, but I obviously wasn't director level. And I needed to find another job. And I knew that I wanted to work for a big corporate. So I had 4 companies on my list. I had Accenture, had a company called Colt, a company called Microsoft, and there's another company called Avaya. And I did not know how to navigate this. So in my family, I was the first to kind of go out and kind of enter this corporate world. And of all my cousins and things like that, I was still the first. I didn't know where to turn. So I went on LinkedIn. And I became the biggest stalker, and I'm still the biggest stalker. And I found, and I've got no shame in that. And I found a lady, and I still speak her name. Her name was Marwa El Henaway at the time, before she was married. And she was like a white Egyptian lady from Canada, random, but she was a product director at Microsoft. And I had been working with one of her products. We all use it now, Skype for Business, but she was actually the person that did the integration between Link 2010 and into Skype for Business. And so I messaged her being like, oh, I'm really interested in like hosted cloud products, but you just look amazing. Would you mind meeting up? Blah, 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 this is who I am. And it took her 7 days to get back to me. And I remember in those 7 days, I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I've done this. I'm not going to get... And this is 6 years ago. So before LinkedIn was what it is now, for me, it was one of the bravest things and best things I've done for my career. 7 days later, she came back to me and she was like, sorry, I was in Seattle. Of course she was. And we met up in, I remember in a little coffee shop in Chiswick, and we began talking, and she is just incredible. And she literally said to me, "Do you want me to be your mentor?" And I was like, yes, that's all I want. And then I asked her, like, why did you meet with me? And she said to me, because a few years before, she'd actually reached out to the VP of Cisco, or the president of Cisco, something very senior, like C-1. And they were at their annual technology conference in Las Vegas. She flew out there, sent them a message on LinkedIn, said, meet me for a coffee. She ended up meeting with the CEO -1, and obviously got offered a job on the spot. And I was like, I mean, I didn't fly out to Vegas. And she's like, yeah, but you've reached out. And that has stayed with me my whole career. So she became my mentor. In the end, I had 3 job offers. I had Accenture, Avaya, and Colt. She helped me negotiate my salary because I didn't have a clue. And as black women, especially like first generation, we're like, oh, we've got a job. Okay, great. Salary? Oh, that's, yeah, fantastic, great, done. But no, and I tell my friends this, I tell these guys this, you go out there, you know your worth, and you negotiate your salary. She taught me how to do that. I got the salary that I asked for. I was really like, oh my God, this is more money than I've ever earned ever in my life. And that's followed me. It's been the catalyst for my career. I walked into Accenture, not being scared of leadership or anything like that, or levels. I emailed a senior managing director. I didn't even know that he was an SMD. He got me immediately the job on RBS. That was my first role. And he became one of my sponsors and actually introduced me to a guy who's a white guy from Manchester, middle class, who became one of my sponsors. And a few of us have worked for him. The first time, his name was Gareth, and the first time I met him, he was like, Wagwan. And I was like, first of all, and I was literally like, Gareth, like, I don't speak like that. And I did not know him. And he was quite a hard leader, very, very driven, had very, very high standards. And everyone was kind of a bit scared of him. And so was I, to be honest. Fast forward a few, sorry, this is a long one, but I'm really passionate about this. It's so important. Fast forward maybe 6 to 9 months. I had done my first migration this is for RBS Bank. And we'd taken out all the telephone banking and online banking in the UK on a Saturday morning. And I had the CTO call me up, he was actually my guy, of RBS Bank, being like, Mel, where are you? So I'd gone back to the hotel to sleep. I can't say the client, sorry, I forgot. So I had the CTO call me up basically say, like, where are you? And I was like, oh, I'm back at the hotel, I've got someone else in there. He was like, no, you need to get back, we've got nothing. And obviously the whole bank was going crazy. You've got people tweeting, being like, oh, this bank is so crap, blah, blah, blah. And Gareth jumped on the phone, and when they were all shouting at me, was like, you will not speak to Mel like that. She is not the reason there is an issue. She's actually trying to fix this for you. And for that reason, you're all going to stop, or I'm going to pull it full stop. And that for me was immediately, okay, you're a good leader, you back your team, and then you've also got me. He then became my sponsor. And fast forward like 6 years, and I spent the weekend with some friends at his house in his mansion in Manchester. And he's been there, he's helped me negotiate my salary as I've gone up the bands. I left Accenture for a little while and then came back, but we'll talk about that later. But he helped me negotiate coming back and making sure that everything was at the right level. So basically, for me, mentors are invaluable, and if you should pay it forward, and also you should definitely make sure you get one, in my opinion. But yeah, sorry.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to have some questions from the floor now. Are we using this mic, or we've got roaming mics? So I think we've got a question at the front from the person in the green dress. I think.
Hi, my name's Natalie. I'm the head of marketing for the UK and Hong Kong, a management consulting firm called Capco, which you're probably all familiar with because we're Accenture. My question is actually related to mentorship versus sponsorship. So they're really, really different, and I think we should probably explain it to everyone just in case. But my question would be around, how do you identify a sponsor, not a mentor? And how do you find a sponsor that doesn't do what you do, but can still fight for you to get to where you want to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, completely agree. They're very, very different. So for me, sponsors are people that see you and see your work. So you need to first be good. Like, let's get that. We have a standard. We need to meet that standard. You first of all be good, and then they will normally pick you out. They're normally someone that you're able to challenge, be really authentic with. So Gareth helped me. He became my sponsor more than my mentor, like completely. He wouldn't be someone I was going to be like, oh, I've walked into a room, I'm the only black female, and all these CEOs are looking at me, and I'm having to explain myself yet again. He's not the person I go to for that. But if I want to say, right, I'm going up for promotion, I don't know what to do, I need to make sure there's people in the room that are shouting for me, Gareth would be that guy. And our relationship, as I said, started off very much like, kind of, who is this person? But I challenged him. I challenged his leadership style. I was also good at my job and good at my role, and I had clear passions, and I was very clear on who I was, and I wasn't willing to kind of falter on that, and he respected it. And in the end, it was a very, very natural gravitation. I don't think you can ask people to be your sponsor. I think you need to be, as I said, you need to be good at your job. You need to make sure that person sees it, and once that relationship's established, you can then kind of ask them to be in your corner, and they naturally will, because human beings, they like to help people. Like, it's intrinsic. They want to do it. So you just need to do your part, which is be good, right? And make sure they see it, and then go from there. And then from a mentorship perspective, I think you can ask mentors. I've got mentors for different spheres of life, but I tend to gravitate towards people that look like me. Absolutely. So that's other black women in senior positions. But then there's a lot of times there's like white women in either senior positions or more kind of, or like level, like senior management positions, who I'm like, actually, you get the woman thing, and you get the challenges, and they end up stepping into that role. And I do think you can ask those people, and they would be very much, happy to do so.
I think I completely agree with what you said there, Mel. I think one thing I really want to emphasize is around making sure that they see what you do. Yeah. So from my experience, when I was more junior in my career, I could be as good as I wanted to be, but if nobody saw it, they're not going to sponsor you. And that's something I think within our community, we sometimes need to work on a little bit. We sometimes think, and I don't want to generalize amongst everybody, but from our experience in Accenture, we sometimes think if you get the work done, put your head down, someone will notice. And in these big corporations, that's often not the case. You kind of need to be able to shout authentically about what you do in order for that sponsor to then be able to pick you up and say, yes, I can see that. As you've said already, everybody's super busy in their careers. And they don't always have, I mean, they should, but they're not always the best at always noticing things that aren't visibly in front of them. So as I've got a little bit more senior, starting to get better about shouting about the things that I do. And then in terms of your question around sponsors outside of the business, again, I think that's about making sure that you're making yourself visible in those spaces. Otherwise, they're not going to see what you're doing and the great things you're doing. But yeah, I agree, a sponsor should almost gravitate towards you, see the potential in you, and shout about you when you're not in the room. Any other questions? We've got two here.
Do you want to go first? Or?
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Malobi. I work for a market research firm called Savanta. At the moment, I'm currently working with some friends to create a Pan-African STEM community that can teach young kids how to code, etc. And I just wanted to know from you guys, from your experience, you might have come across other sort of black young people or professionals that you're trying to sort of convince the importance of tech and innovation and stuff like that. So how do you sort of get people interested and excited about it, aside from saying if you become this, you earn this amount of money? How else do you get people into sort of tech and innovation?
So it's taken me a long time through the experience I've had to get to this answer. And quite simply, it's first of all asking them what type of change would they like to see in the world? What type of things have challenged you as you've grown as a child that you would want to change and impact? And then helping them open their mind, especially innovation and technology, and realize we live in an age right now where technology as a catalyst is driving most of the conversations in these enterprise companies. And if they want to be part of the change as opposed to complaining about what is in front of them, then that's the first thing. And sometimes that takes children time. So just before that, it's really about trying to bring to their attention the great things that are already going on around them. And then decomposing that and saying, and you realize that this change you saw with, and I use this as an example, not because I want to champion the company, but the changes you see with connected devices, such as mobile payments and Apple or Facebook connectivity, started with someone looking at an issue where human beings were dealing with offline relationships and finding it difficult to connect with people that they had lost touch with. The mobile phone was becoming antiquated, because if you didn't have the phone number, you couldn't connect with them. If you didn't have the email address, you couldn't connect with them. But suddenly, when you got a digital account, it allowed you to connect with people that you'd long lost touch with. Why was that important? Because we all have relationships we built up, that some of them we are sad we've lost, and some of them we want to reconnect with. But how do you build a platform that does that? You have to go back to the person who faced that issue, and what they did was apply technology to solving the problem. I also think you've got to ask the question about what excites them. Because, I'll be honest with you, I've coded many a line of code in my time. I've spent 24-hour days coding things that won't break. And you've got to have a passion for it, because at some point you'll give up. If you don't have the passion for what you're doing, at some point you'll give up. So I don't think it's a case of forcing people. I think it's a case of supporting their natural discovery of technology, its impact. And when we think about Pan-African, which is where you're going, I would cite some of the things that are happening in China and in Africa and in Asia. One of the things the Western world has had the fortune of doing before the digital revolution was obviously go through the necessary conduits of cash payment, then many people with digital payment, but not everybody. And then they've made us a lot more connected. With the countries, and I use a story of Alibaba, specifically in China, what he's been able to do. Many of the people he's been able to support didn't have a bank account, couldn't get a loan as a small business, but somehow he's made most of the country go to the most advanced level of payment just using a chat platform where you can seamlessly pay for everything you need to do, where you can seamlessly deliver your goods to whoever wants to order them without taking the burden. And what that demonstrates to people is it doesn't matter what part of the world you're in anymore. As long as there's the right infrastructure, you enable people to be able to support themselves, their families, and their communities, and therefore make a change in the world, right? And I think it's that level of resonance, of ambition, through discovery that starts the journey. But I would never try to force anyone on it, because there are lots of different things you can do in technology. You can be the product designer who never codes, but you have a vision of how the product should be. You can be the person who really loves code and who'll code all the way through. And it's really about letting that person discover who they are within that conduit.
I think we might have just run out of time for more questions, unfortunately. But we're going to be here throughout the day. We've got a stand outside with Accenture. We are recruiting, I have to say. So
Shameless plug.
Yeah, just have to, quick plug. So if anyone's interested in anything digital, anything product, consumer goods related, please do find us by the desk just outside on your left-hand side. And also feel free to come to us to ask any questions. We're more than happy to support. And thanks for coming.